I'm Hannah Levasani, and I work in the cybersecurity program delivery team. So I've always had an interest in technology, even from quite a young age. I mean, I was always into PlayStations, playing games growing up. So it's really kind of, been at the fore for me. Tech has always captivated me. I needed a way into technology with a fine art degree background, which is not easy. Sky had been a company that I was absolutely, I want to use the word obsessed, but I was a big sports fan. I love TV, I love content. And so I discovered the Technology Graduate Scheme. They accepted graduates with any degree discipline. So I thought, I've got a shot. I went for the interviews and got the role. And my tech journey started from there in earnest because I had the backing of Sky to do some qualifications, to experience all different areas of technology within Sky. And I eventually settled in what was at the time the CTO office. So essentially doing projects and programs across the whole of technology, including this building that we're sitting in today. But I ended up working in the cybersecurity team, which is fantastic. I think what I find most rewarding is being able to sit down with the cybersecurity teams, understand what kind of tools and technologies they want to put into the business, and then actually making that happen, bringing it to life. So it's, in its idea, it's a product they've selected. Actually putting it in place and seeing the output is really rewarding. So Sky is amazing. It's, I don't need to describe it to my husband because he works here already. I would just say it's a really welcoming, diverse, embracing company, and it really supports you. There's enough here that if you want to try something new, a new role, you can move around. It's fully supportive. Even just coming in on a day-to-day basis, you walk through the campus, you feel fantastic, landscape gardens, the studio when you come in. So obviously I work in cybersecurity and there's some incredible things on the horizon. Looking more at my program management role, there's, the way that we're working, the pandemic's obviously driven us much more towards a collaborative environment. There's so many tools and technologies that now bring us all together. We're doing hybrid working at the moment. We've got members of the team all over the country and actually all over the world now.
How are you going? You all good? Excellent. This is the last session in this room, so we're going to end with a bang today. Before we begin, there is a slider, as some of you may have already seen in other sessions. Jay reminded me earlier, it's T for Tom, S for Sam, C for customer, E for experience, TSCE, if you'd like to submit a question on Slido. And I'll be looking at the iPad later to answer some of those questions that come up. Sound good? My name is Angelica Stevenson, if we haven't met yet. I'm your host for today's panel, The Only Way to Ethics. And I'm going to begin with a little story. And we're going to go back to 2019. I was a technology strategy and innovation manager at the time. And my remit was to evaluate different emerging technologies. Some of you in this room I've recognized from that previous role. And then we would evaluate and then evangelize the potential benefits of these to different business units. At the time, artificial intelligence and machine learning was the topic on everyone's lips. And it was very promising to a business like Sky, because imagine using this technology to, in effect, automate a lot of processes that would otherwise be manual if you could find the thing you were after in TV shows and movies. So in this case, I was working with a colleague, and we were evaluating some software from a provider on a trial license. And we were evaluating a women's football match to see whether, or how accurate it could find objects, people, other concepts. Now, I'll give you a little brief of what it was about. On one side of the screen, you've got the frame, right? The TV show, maybe piece of content that we had to look at. And on the other side, you'd have a list of all the different results it had found, each put with a degree of confidence out of 100, yeah? And I remember the urgency in his voice. He said, Jel, You've got to come here. And I ran there quickly, and I started to look at this thing that, that we were looking at. It was a frame of the pitch, 100%. Okay. Football, 100%. Yep, great. But then I saw what struck his eye. There was a woman on the screen, chocolate brown skin, and hair so intricately braided. So this is functional and stylish, but yet beautiful. 100% hedgehog. I can see, there you go, Kira. Right. So I had read the stories about, I'm sure some of you have been seeing the news about Target inadvertently revealing a teenage pregnancy to a father via the use of coupons. I'd seen the sexist AI algorithm tools, right, with every best intent to make life easier for people to find the right candidates, but inadvertently excluding women. It's these stories seeing close to home. That was the reason, it reminded me why I had started Sky's Digital Ethics Network months earlier. To make us be that little bit more mindful when we think about developing products and services, to minimize the impact of making decisions that had unintended consequences with a negative impact on customers, their families, and society as a whole. We fast forward to now, and I get to use so many of these learnings in tech ethics in my current role as a senior technical product manager working on Sky's Smart Camera, due out very soon. I work with an awesome team of developers and designers with a mission to design and build experiences that bring and spread joy responsibly. But we're going to learn about that a little bit later, because I now get to invite the first panelist. So Alice Thwaite is a renowned tech ethicist and philosopher. She's a thought leader in tech ethics, working with technologists to help understand the different aspects of tech ethics. And she's also been recently awarded various things. Most importantly, more recently rather, CogX Outstanding Achievement Award for her work in this space. And she's been recently named one of the top 100 women in AI ethics. Please join me in welcoming our first panelist, Alice Thwaite.
Hi, everyone. Is this, okay, wonderful, hi. It's so great to be here, and I think I've said to every single member of the Den, which is the Digital Ethics Network for people who might not be familiar with that. Honestly, the work that you've done at Sky has been groundbreaking. To see something that is employee-led and then kind of filters up through the top, and then to have an event here is really inspirational. So anyone who's part of that, it's a really good thing. I've been asked for the next 5-6 minutes to talk a little bit about what tech ethics is. 5 or 6 minutes isn't a very, very long time. So I'll just kind of give you some headlines, I suppose. I think the story that Jel just articulated then around various different racist structures that appear in technology are ones that we're quite familiar with. We can point at many different examples. That one's a particular one I hadn't heard of before. So yeah, very good to hear a new one. Yeah, exactly. But it's, all these things aren't really surprising, right? Because the thing is about technology ethics that we have to think about is that it is just a branch of ethics. Technology didn't just kind of invent all of these social structures. It didn't invent racism. It didn't invent misogyny. All it's done is codified it. And so actually when we're working in this space around technology ethics right now, we can't just concentrate on the technology. We have to actually focus on what technology does for society. And in some ways, we're actually quite lucky that technology has codified these structures, because it's made it very difficult to argue that there isn't racism, there isn't misogyny anymore. And so actually having these examples in some ways has done us a bit of a favor. But having said that, we know where the problems are. The thing is that we have to do now is think about how we're going to go about solving them. And that's a really hard part. So I'm going to just talk quickly about what ethics is. This is the broadest definition of ethics that I know. And it's the study of how to live. So anyone who's doing any sort of ethical work is trying to figure out what humans need to live, how we live in our societies with each other, with the environment, and so on. And so what I always say to businesses is, if you don't have a vision of how you want society to be, we can't do ethics. We can't do data ethics. We can't do AI ethics. We can't do anything like that. And the best thing about this question, though, is that I bet many people in this room have done a humanities degree or a social science degree, that actually people have been studying this for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. It's just that those methodologies haven't necessarily crossed into the workplace. So I'm a philosopher. The philosophical discipline is really concentrated in trying to define what ethics should be. So what are those things around how we want to live? So that's where we get ideas like justice, human dignity, equality. All of these things really do fit into that idea of anti-discrimination and anti-racism. But then, we've got other ones as well. Social science, anthropology really feeds into a lot of UX work. So I don't know if anyone here is a UX designer, but you do use a lot of the work from anthropology there. Art, music, literature, architecture, it's all there. All we need to do now is translate those kind of methods into the design of technology. And I say that's all we need to do. Obviously, that's a huge endeavor, but actually the vision is there. We're not reinventing the wheel. We're just putting the wheel on something that, it should have been moving with wheels for a long time. We've been just dragging it along. I haven't done that metaphor before. I don't know if I'll do it again. But yeah. So technology ethics is just mainly in that sphere then of using ethics and applying it to technology. So it's kind of simple, right? So who here has actually done any of these degrees before? Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I bet when you kind of speak to people on your team, like quite often they'll just suddenly be like, oh yeah, I remember I was reading something about this, 20 years ago or something, and suddenly they are inspired to start thinking about these questions in a new light. So why is it important? This is the main reason why it's important. I don't know, on LinkedIn, that kind of like Henry Ford example comes up time and time again about why did Henry Ford want to employ employees a good wage, And it's always interesting the way that kind of story is rolled out because, obviously I didn't know Henry Ford, but I often think that the reason why we do these things, obviously I don't know Henry Ford, obviously. Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know.
Yeah. But I'm just saying I can't really imagine what he was actually trying to get at there, and neither can any of these people who do these sound bites about Henry Ford on LinkedIn the whole time. But really, we've got to do this just because it's important. We're all kind of working together to build worlds. We all know that the most important thing that we can do now to save the planet is choose the right career path. So why don't we bring these kind of ideas about how we want to work into the workplace? And so many people who are here today are doing that. So it's valuable for this reason. But, and I hate I'm going to have to do this, it's also valuable for some other reasons which are business related. But often you do have to kind of say these things because we're still kind of working in this world where we need to kind of align what we're doing with other kind of business related goals. These ones have been tried and tested, and they do generally work when you're trying to convince someone as to why ethics is important, which I don't think you have to do at Sky, but let's say you go elsewhere. Which would be awful. Don't do that, just in case. So innovation. Ethics for me is innovative. Innovation for me is when you take a old problem and then you apply a new method and a way to solve that problem. So by its very nature, it's innovative. You manage your risk, and you also build trust. And trust is something which is declining in a lot of spaces right now. I'm currently working with Omnigov on the ethics of government advertising. They're very concerned around this whole thing. But these are kind of the three things that I always look at when it comes to a business benefit. But the real one is that one. It's human lives are valuable, planet is valuable, and it's the right thing to do. So on that note, I'm going to pass over. Is you introducing?
I am introducing indeed.
Okay, there you go. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, Alice. Now, I get the pleasure of inviting two remarkable women onto stage to complete the panel. Please welcome Diana Speha, Data Ethics Lead, and Arti Palmer, Head of Product Management for Voice and Remote, both working for Sky. I'm going to give this to you.
Oh, thank you.
That's all right. Let's start with you, Diana. So, I've got a lot to learn about you, but you've worked in tech for nearly a decade, and you joined Sky last October in your role as Data Ethics Lead. But what was really fascinating to learn about you was you started your career in international development, working as a policy researcher for the United Nations. So it'd be super cool to hear more about your role at Sky and how your exposure to the human dimension early in your career has influenced the way in which you do your role now, because there's a lot there we can unpack.
Thank you, Angelica. It's really great to be here. As Jill mentioned, I'm the Data Ethics Lead for Sky, And a big part of my job is to help teams that use data do so in an ethical manner. It's a new role, it's an exciting role, and it's a very varied role. So what I was going to do today is talk to you a bit about some of the activities that me and my team have been involved in. Broadly, we focus on 3 areas, those being building ethical tools, working with fantastic individuals in product and design to embed ethics into business frameworks, and we also work on awareness raising and education. So to get us started, the first thing we focus on is the creation of ethical tools, frameworks, policies, and so on. So to that end, earlier this year, we have launched an internal guide called the Data Ethics Handbook. In the handbook, we define a set of ethical data behaviors which we want all Sky employees to embrace. Another example I can share are the model cards. So in an effort to bring more transparency to the way Sky use its machine learning models, we have started developing a set of tools aimed at both technical and non-technical audience to document some of the machine learning models' limitations and ethical considerations. Doing ethics, as some of you may be aware, is a very collaborative process. So earlier this year, we have held a number of workshops with product and design teams to unpack what ethics means for new product development. Now, all the internal staff will know Sky is very much a product-driven company, and having examples of how ethics can inform new product development was a wildly exciting thing to do. Last but not least, I'm very honored to be serving as co-chair of the Digital Ethics Network. For those who do not know DEN, it's an employee-led body on a mission to inform design and documentation of kind of the data usage and tech usage here at Sky. So in a nutshell, these are some of the things that data ethics and data ethicists do. Because it's such a broad area, I feel very fortunate that I can refer back to some of my previous experiences. As Jill mentioned, in one of my previous roles, I have worked with a number of mobile operators, and we were looking to bridge the gender gap in mobile money and mobile internet for women and in low and middle income countries. And what we did was we leveraged the data they've shared with us to inform our approach and to enable social impact. And for me, that was meaningful because it showed me the potential of the telecoms industry and the tech industry more broadly in unlocking socioeconomic benefits using the power of data in a responsible manner. Another example I can share was in one of my other recent roles, I have worked alongside many exciting young businesses. So as an accelerator lead, I worked with young founders who had a very strong social mission to keep children safe online and to provide cyber education. And that's when I realized that having an ethical product can actually mean better commercial business model, and it can mean improvement in brand perception. So it can actually lead to very many commercial benefits, but it also enables a faster and more responsible innovation. And I like to think about these examples because you may have heard today in other panel sessions here at Sky, we pride ourselves on being very innovative and fast-paced, but we're also ethical. So that's it for me. Thank you, Jill.
It's all right. Arti, hello.
Hi.
Hi. So Arti, you joined Sky from Yahoo in 2011, and you first started on Sky Email, and then the search capabilities that power Sky Q, Now, Sky Go, and Sky.com. And then you moved to Voice in 2017, working on Sky Free First, and then more recently leading the first hands-free voice product with Sky and Comcast collaborating with Hello Sky and Sky Glass. You know, it's a reference to the Hello Sky that you may have seen outside our Sky Innovation Center. It must have been a pretty cool moment seeing that, right? But before we come to the ethical considerations of voice, I thought it would be good to unpack just The voice detection, which you and I have worked on before, there's a slight difference between how voice detection works in Sky Q versus Sky Glass, right? And it would be great if you could share what those differences are.
Yeah, that's correct. Thanks, Angelica. Absolutely. So on Sky Q, voice works with the voice remote control. So Sky Q customers can pick up the remote control, press the voice button, and say their voice query. With Sky Glass, we've gone a step further. We do have a remote control with voice built into it, but what we've also done is built microphones into the television, so customers can stand away from the TV, and all they have to do is say hello Sky to activate far-field voice.
Awesome. And the great question here, so what have you had to consider from an ethical standpoint when it comes to voice?
That's a good question. Definitely, I think with voice, what was really interesting for me, and I learned a lot, is it's a product where obviously we wanted to be very fair with customers and make sure it worked the best way possible. So I think two things come to mind. One was, we want to avoid any sort of cultural bias, so we had to train the system and the technology to make sure all accents, dialects, voices worked as best they could, and all customers could enjoy, the simplicity that it offers. The second item, I think, is privacy. So some customers, and rightly so, may be concerned that voice assistants or voice systems are listening to them and recording them. So we wanted to make sure, we have that customer confidence. We have rigorous data protection reviews that we run when we are defining our products, and we adhere to those data protection advice and comments that we get. So that was all taken into consideration, how we store data, we do it ethically, responsibly, we only use it for the right purposes. So, we look at it holistically and make sure we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a key thing that I could confidently say is really present in the people that we're working with. It's like this forever desire, albeit hard, to do the right thing.
Exactly.
And I would say that those ethical considerations that you've just outlined are very similar to what we in the team have been working through on the smart camera, as I said, which is due next year. So I thought to bring everyone up to speed on the smart camera, in case you haven't heard much about it, I thought I'd get a good old-fashioned sizzle reel to do the talking.
Hello, guys.
Hello. Hi.
Where's Sophie?
I'm here. Surprise! Jamie's joining us.
Hello. Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday, Grandpa. Dad, let me do it.
In 2, get ready. 1, take it away. So we've detected that your knees are collapsing in slightly. Well done, I can see your knees are in a great position.
Havertz! It's a brilliant header from Kai Havertz, who leaps it overhead, and it's Chelsea who make an explosive start.
Okay. There we go. So the smart camera is one of Sky's most innovative and ambitious products yet, which would transform Sky Glass, our flagship TV, into an enabler for even better interactivity between customers and the content that they love, and connection between customers, their nearest and dearest, and with society as a whole. So through the experiences that we saw video calling rather, gaming, fitness, and content, interacting with content is no longer just the sit back, lean back and watch kind of concept. We're leaning forward and do, right? And connection is no longer confined to just the people in your living room. We're making it easier for people to connect with friends and family, not just within their rooms, but near and far. And I certainly can see that being much of an advantage for me when I'm talking to my parents who are still based in Sydney, Australia. Now, we're extremely conscious about the ethical considerations, because not only do we have to think about the audio aspects like Artie outlined, but we have to think about video as well, right? As you saw on the sizzle reel, there are a lot of things that require detecting of the person in the living room to be able to, chop fruit in Fruit Ninja, or to be able to frame a person or groups of people well in their living rooms. And so when we think, some of the things we're thinking about is the training data and validation data that fuels machine learning systems and helps us validate that the machine learning systems are working. So not only do we have to consider the ages, but we also need to consider skin tones, ethnicities, and different abilities as well. But then you have to layer on top of that the fact that it has to work in different living rooms as well, right? So there's one aspect of that, which again parallels lots with what Artie was saying. And then there's the data protection front as well. And we have to think about that the way in which we process video is secure from the get-go. Yeah? Especially considering that many of the experiences that we're going to launch with and into the future are going to be targeted for children as well as adults, right? And in the future, we may want to consider recording the video. So I look after, so a lot, part of what my remit is looking to the social aspect. So there's a desire of potentially connecting by recording and sharing. So how do we, well, it's not even a how do we have to design our systems from the get-go and be proud that when we say, yes, we have our customers' data and interests at heart. And then from a privacy standpoint, oh, sorry, there's one more thing I wanted to add here. Then on the topic of recording video, it's not just enough to, like for me, ethics is about not what we must do, but what we should do. And there's this drive to be very explicit, and yes, it's a GDPR requirement, but that explicit consent from customers, but making really, really obvious if we're going to need to capture video, photo, and audio. The bare minimum isn't enough. Now, with the hardware itself, right, from a privacy standpoint, we must make it really easy for customers to turn off the camera mics when they do want their privacy honored. So what you can see here is two things. You've got the hardware mute button that's sitting on top. And I stress the hardware because it means when you press that button, it's off. The power is switched off entirely. So there's no way that we can hear you or see you. Right? So that reassurance that when people want their privacy, they know it's for certain. And equivalently, when we want to use the camera, we need to make it obvious. So you may have seen just when it animated, there's a little LED light on the hardware to say when it is in use. So there's lots of things we're doing. I'm not suggesting we are perfect by any means. This is a very difficult but very worthwhile journey. And I'm very confident that with the team in place that we're going to work a chip at a time. And that was certainly something you and I, Alice, were saying earlier, right? Now, I want to unpack this a little bit more because one of the key things that makes us really successful, certainly on the smart camera, is just the awareness and the culture we had within the teams to really think of ethics from the get-go. And when we were as a panel discussing what we wanted to spend this next few time, culture and education was the unanimous topic to talk about. And I'm going to start with you, Artie, here, given we're still on the theme of product development. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think are, we've obviously been going through ethical considerations here, but I wanted to ask, what are the main challenges when it comes to incorporating ethics into product development? And in your view, what happens if we don't?
Yeah, sure. Another good question. I think, anybody who's familiar with product management may be aware of this, but one of the first stages we start with when we are working on a new idea is product discovery and, understanding an idea. Is it worth doing? What should we do with it? And I think baking ethical considerations into that very first stage from day one is really important, and that's what we should be really focusing on and building awareness to make sure that all product teams are doing that. If we don't, I think we're setting ourselves up for failure a little bit because we may be missing out on things that are important for customers. At the end of the day, we're building these products for them, and we want to have their confidence and their trust. So it's not just about cool technology and simple features to use. It's got to be right, we want to make sure we have their trust.
Exactly. I think that's the trust is the
Definitely.
big thing, and that's, if it's one thing I hope that's come away with a few of the talks, and there's certainly a talk later, the trust in the brand and customers' trust is a huge thing for us at Sky. Diana. So I like to think of you as someone that's done a lot of practical work in terms of building culture, and that's not to say we all haven't been part of it, but I'm super keen to ask you, like, how did you approach the activity of building the culture? And I guess if it's something we could pass on to take for people to take away, or even on those logging in virtually, what advice would you give to others who are keen to start doing something similar in their teams or in their organizations?
Sure. I think here at Sky, there are 3 factors underpinning an ethical data culture, and they are effectively about committing enough resource, empowering people, and setting the right vision. And I think whilst all of these require support from leadership, actually everyone has a role to play in supporting this design of an ethical data culture. And I think that stands true for Sky as well as other organizations. So for example, part of our vision is to build an approach to ethical data treatment that is industry leading. But actually what really helps us is incorporating our employees' views and our customers' views into that vision. So what we've done in Sky Data is we ran a survey and we asked over 100 Sky Data employees what is it that they actually care about when we talk about data ethics. And they said, we want to make sure that customer data is kept safe, especially if we talk about the vulnerable customers. We care about keeping algorithms accountable, and we care about the products that we design. So going back to smart camera and everything else we've heard today, we actually don't want to be behind a product which is not deemed ethical. And so, understanding what is it that people care about then lets us double down on these areas and prioritize them. So I think that's part 1, kind of setting up a vision that actually resonates with people. Part 2 is investment. So as you know, we have a little data ethics team, but we also rely and we partner up with a number of other teams here at Sky. For example, Responsible Business team. You might know them as someone behind projects such as Ocean Rescue and Net Zero. There's also a person now in the product team. I think their official title is Head of Product Inclusion and Equity, which, similar to data ethicist, was not a job that you can see on LinkedIn 5 years ago. There's the Comcast product ethics team, and we're really inspired by what they're doing, and we're leaning on them to ensure alignment across the group. So having that network of supporters is really, really important. Yeah. And last but not least, the DEN, the Digital Ethics Network. It really, on the one hand, it helps to keep Sky accountable for ethical tech innovation. On the other hand, it's a really good, it helps us identify practical ways to get individuals involved. So what we do is we run workshops, we involve people in creation of tools, we hold talks. So any individual or team that actually wants to bring ethics into their daily job, we would obviously love to hear from you and see how we can collaborate. I think in a nutshell, these are some of the examples of things we've done. I think as you mentioned earlier, it is a long change process, building an ethical data culture. Yeah. But we're proud with what we've done so far, and we hope that some of these examples can serve as inspiration for other companies.
And you're welcome to chat with us afterwards and some of these things. I know we're, there's only so far we can talk about right now, right? So based on the time, so more than happy to chat. There's a lot to do. Alice, I had this one question for you in terms of how well understood do you reckon is the topic of ethics in the tech sector? And what needs to be done to highlight its importance? Because we've been talking a lot about internally within businesses to affect change, but outwardly in the tech sector, we also, I think there's some opportunity there. So what are your thoughts on that?
I might ask the audience, like, who thinks it's important here? Obviously everyone, right, because you're in this talk. Who thinks that there's an obvious pathway to getting it done, though? You know? Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? So I think that's kind of where we're at. Like, most business leaders, most CEOs that I speak to, which is not a lot, I'd like to speak some more, obviously.
There's a few here.
Yeah. They recognise the importance of it, but I think also they're not really framing a lot of the strategic decisions that they have as being ethical problems as well. So they kind of see lots of strategic decisions and kind of like decisions about whether or not they should go in this direction or this direction, and they're not then thinking about the role that ethical methodologies coming from philosophy, social science, etc., can then play in making the right decision. And the truth is as well is there's not many people like, you know, who've got any sort of experience in ethics when it comes to tech. And so it's more about teaching those people who have been working in tech but might have a social science degree or a philosophy degree to then take that learning from their undergraduate or their master's or their A-level or whatever it was and place it into a new kind of work stream. And so that's really what I think the task is right now, is that we need to upskill as many people as possible to start thinking about how they can become a professional ethicist. Because in the same way that everyone here is a reader and writer, I don't know how many people here are professional writers. Like, we all have a role to play in terms of being better ethicists, but there should also be someone who is like held accountable, who is that, not they're held accountable, but it's their job description to make sure that these sorts of things are kind of designed into the technological system. And so I think, yes, I mean, we're all aware of the examples, you know, A-level results scandal, you name it, we can all see the examples. We know it's important. What we don't know is how to get there next. And the message is, we've already got the tools, we've got the methods, they exist, you've probably studied them. If you haven't studied them, one of your friends has studied them. It's just about translating that into a context that works for business. And that's, I think that's the message.
That's it. Totally agree on this. We have some questions. Well, we have a question from the Slido. And the question is, to what degree do ethical approaches differ by country and national culture?
I can take that.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think this is the number one question that kind of comes up.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this idea of like ethical relativism. So everyone has like different kind of ideas about what should constitute a good society.
That's it.
And I think you do see differences based on, you know, not, you know, on a family by family basis or on an individual by individual basis. Like, you know, I get into arguments with my sister all the time about this kind of thing. So it's wrong to say that we don't have different points of view on what makes a good life. Having said that, I think that we do get hung up on this question a little bit too much, because there's so much low-hanging fruit out there when it comes to ethics that relates to human dignity, that relates to justice and all these things. That's not to say that we shouldn't be inclusive and bringing every single voice that we possibly can into our design process and making sure that we're not ethics washing, making sure that we're not actually, you know, like shutting out certain voices that don't agree with our original perspective. But I think it's wrong to kind of go down too much of an ethical relativist stance right now when there's so much low-hanging fruit, you know? There's so many examples around surveillance that is kind of the stuff that we need to be working on. And then we can kind of deal with ethical relativism when it comes to a later stage. I mean, there's so many nuances and caveats to what I've said, so I could probably give like a 30-minute, 40-minute lecture on this, but I'd say that's the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like the way I would see it. Like, there's some things that there's a degree of confidence, using that term again, that it's going to be true independently of the culture, but then that's the stuff that you work on. This is already hard as it stands. I don't think we've all got it worked out. So you focus on that, and as we progress, we can move to the nuances between.
There's no culture that advocates for genocide, for instance, and yet there are technologies that are enabling genocide. You know, we can point at so many of them. So even if we just start with that, you know, that's the thing to focus on.
And we've got, oh, unfortunately, we've run out of time for today, guys. But the good thing is I can recommend you at 4:35 this afternoon. We do have a big picture session. Similar topic. We're going to hear trust expert Rachel Botsman, and she'll be talking about trust in the digital era. So you can see where there's some definite relationships there. relation there, and how tech leaders can do more to avoid the unintended consequences of their innovation. So I hope you guys will join me over there. I want to say thank you so much to Alice, Artie, and Diana for your insight today, and thank you to everyone here for joining. Again, this is a panel on This is the Only Way is Ethics, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Cheers.